For this sample, we will be doing an inside curve sample and an outside curve sample. The inside curve is going to be a situation where you are stitching and it's on an inside curve. Outside curves are when you're creating on the large part or the outside of a circle. There are certain things that you need to do when you do an inside curve or an outside curve stitch. On an inside curve, you are going to be clipping into the material up to the stitch, but not through the stitch. The reason that we do this is so that you can allow the material to overlap, so it will lay nice and flat when you press it. On the outside curves, because you can see that the material is stretching outwards, there needs to be more space for it to lay flat. So you're going to be creating notches on the outside. You're going to be cutting into the stitch, but not through the stitch. So you'll be using pattern piece 15A. When you are doing the inside curve sample, you'll be following the dotted lines for stitching. When you do the outside curve, you'll be following the dotted and dashed line for that sample. So you'll be creating two separate samples, an inside curve sample and an outside curve sample. For this one, I'm going to be using the maroon to demonstrate the outside curve. You'll be doing a normal stitch starting at 5/8. Remember, you don't want to be sewing over your pins, so as you come up to them, go ahead and pull them out. Back stitch. You're back stitching because you're sewing two pieces together. I get to the pin, I pull it out. Get to the pin, pull it out. The other thing I want to point out is the fact that when I stop, my needle is in the down position. The reason I want my needle in the down position is so that I don't lose my spot on my material. By holding my position, it's going to allow or assure that I am not missing a stitch as I go. We are going to be pivoting, which means that you are going to be turning this corner. To turn the corner, you're going to come forward. When you believe that you are at the 5/8 mark, needle goes down, you bring your presser foot up, you turn your material from underneath, and you check. Okay, is this at my 5/8 mark? It is. If it was too large, I could go back because I'm holding my position with my needle, put my presser foot down, and come forward a stitch. To make sure that I don't go too far forward, I use my hand wheel to have a controlled speed of my needle. Because I'm already at the 5/8 mark, I turn my material. Presser foot must go back in the down position before you start to sew. So I'm coming around. Now, when you're coming around a curve, you need to make sure to go nice and slow. It's not about speed. Your feed dog, which is the little teeth that's underneath your presser foot, is going to pull your material forward for you. So as you are maneuvering the material underneath, you do not have to compensate. Let the machine pull the material for you and steer from the side and from the back. Remember to pull the pins out as you get close. We're going nice and steady, steering from this side and back here. Come up to a pin. You'll start going around. Keep your material laying nice and flat. I'm also keeping my eye out here to make sure that the distance between the edge of my material and the edge of my presser foot is the same and also lined up with the 5/8 mark on my needle plate. That's going to assure that I have a consistent seam allowance all the way through. Now, if you look at the pattern piece, you're going to see that on the outside curve, it comes down and pivots, and it comes around the curve and goes right off. So we're not pivoting at the other end. So as I come around, I am going to back stitch. So you can see I have a nice, smooth outside curve right around the outside of my sample pattern. To complete this, we have to do one more step. At this point, if we were to turn this right side out, you're going to start to see a little bit of the buckling here. If we were to press that, it wouldn't lay flat. So what we're going to do is we have to do a little bit more prep on the inside. So on an outside curve, the way to remember which one to do, either a clip or a notch, is to think about the word. Outside starts with an O. Notch has the letter O in it. So on an outside curve, you're going to do a notch. When you do a notch, you're going to do a couple periodically throughout the curve. A notch is cut into the seam allowance up to the stitching, but not through the stitching. And you're going to do this so that it relieves some of the pressure on the seam. What this allows is you can see that instead of that being stuck here and creating tension, now that we've cut the notch in the seam allowance, it's going to allow the material to spread further if it needs to. By doing that, when we flip it right side out and we press it, it's going to allow the material to lay nice and flat. So that's what your outside curve will look like, with the notches periodically throughout the curves. Remember, outside curve has an O in it, and the notch has an O in it, so that's how you know which one to do.